Committee. I'd ask you to turn your cell phones off during the hearing. If you have to have conversations, if you could do them outside, that would be terrific. There are two items on the agenda today that have been pulled at the request of the authors. SB-1317 by Senator Keogh, which is item number 5. SCR 57 by Senator Vargas, which is item number 13. And we have no bills on consent. So we'll start with Mr. LaMalfa. And this is file item number 1, and it's SB 983. And welcome to Assemblymember Harkey as well.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Please forgive my Johnny Cash voice here today as I'm battling some weather here. But thank you for hearing my bill today, SB 985. This measure would, of course, place the high-speed rail bond back on the ballot in front of the voters should this body choose to do so. There's been a lot of new information that has occurred on the high-speed rail plan since it was first voted by the voters back in November of 2008 as Proposition 1A. As you know, that was originally intended as a $33 billion measure to build a rail from Anaheim to San Francisco with possible spurs to Sacramento and San Diego. $33 billion in Plan 1. Plan 2, about a year after that election, showed it to be about a $42 billion project with some adjustments that were put in by the authority. The ticket price increased from 55 to 105 projected in the Plan 2. Plan 3, finally, after much discussion and admission by the authority, came out last November as one that would be $98.5 billion, hence Senate Bill 985, as the closer to the true cost of building the rail. So we've seen it triple in that short amount of time, still with no end in sight. Plan 4 was recently released in the last few weeks to downsize that a little bit and try to make it more affordable, which was, we've seen it downsized to $68+ billion, and it lopped off portions of what was projected to be in the rail. For example, the Sacramento and San Diego links aren't even talked about anymore. Controversial part of lopping off that $30 billion was that Anaheim was taken out of it too. So that was Plan 4. Plan 5, put in a few days later after a lot of political pressure, was to restore the Anaheim piece, which Plan 4 ostensibly was going to save $6 billion of cost on high-speed rail. And by even the authority's own admission, it didn't seem to, it wasn't worth the $6 billion in order to save minutes. So $600 million per minute of savings, the way it was put. But then a few days later, the political pressure, it was restored as part of Plan 5, High-Speed Rail 5.0, to once again include the Anaheim spur, but the price hasn't really been added back in. Is it $6 billion? Is it some figure different than that? So really the question today is, at this point, have the voters of California been given the real deal on what they approved back in November of 2008 to what they see today or what's coming down the pike soon on high-speed rail? And that's what I'm asking for in this bill, is simply to put it back in front of the voters, hopefully this November, so they can re-vote on what they're going to hopefully see as a real rail plan with real costs and what the real benefits may be or may not be. Some of the problems that we're seeing with it is that does it really remain as high-speed rail when we have this blended approach that's being talked about as the compromise, where the portion from San Francisco through San Jose would use existing lines in the blended approach. That may make a degree of sense, but is it truly high-speed rail? Is it what the voters voted on? Also using Caltrain in the Bay Area and Metrolink down south, is that part of what was intended with high-speed rail? We think not, and we think it will probably run into big legal issues which will further drive up costs and tie up a lot of time on the project. it would be seen as illegal in what was intended in Proposition 1A. So the blended approach is going to have problems. The portion that is a really high-speed rail, once again, when we're talking about the different stops it has to make in the valley, is it going to stop at Hampshire, is it going to stop at Fresno, is it going to stop at Bakersfield? At that point, you're not going to have an achievable goal of making the whole distance in a little under 3 hours with all those stops. So is it technically even correct in that sense of being high speed? Now, does it cover that high speed technicality by running 1 or 2 trains a day as express trains all the way from one end to the other? So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and hide the ball that's going on with what's been purported to be a true high-speed rail program. So I have several folks that are speaking in favor of SB 985 with me here today, and let me turn it over to them.
Before we go to the next speaker, I'm going to ask the Secretary to call a roll for purposes of establishing a quorum.
Desaulnier?
Present.
Desaulnier present. Gaines?
Present.
Gaines present. Harmon? Kehoe? Here. Kehoe present. Lowenthal?
Present.
Lowenthal present. Pavley? Rubio?
Here.
Rubio present. Semidian? Wyland?
Okay, we've got 3 presents and 2 heres, so we have a quorum. Member Harkey, did you want to go next? We'll defer to you, or?
I have no problem with that. I can go ahead and go next. I was going to allow the gentleman to my right.
We want to defer to your elevated standing here as a member of the Assembly.
He was originally supposed to testify. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, I did offer to defer to the member as well. Even though I'm John Gamper representing the California Farm Bureau Federation, and even though my organization has not taken an official position on Senate Bill 985, we would like to take this opportunity to share with the committee some of the impacts and some of our concerns regarding the high-speed rail project, especially the impacts on California's $37 billion agricultural industry. First and foremost, we don't believe that the High-Speed Rail Authority has lived up to the statutory mandate that they choose an alignment that is along existing corridors and utilities in order to mitigate for the impacts on the state's communities and our agricultural and natural resources, as well as the problem of the project being financially viable. The independent peer review working group, as well as the state auditor, have outlined the perceived problems with the various business plans and funding plans, so I'm going to focus my brief comments on the impacts on agriculture. The high-speed rail project will result in the temporary and permanent impacts on thousands of acres of California, some of the world's most fertile farmland. If you've ever seen pictures from outer space of the globe as it rotates, one of the most prominent features as it spins around is the Great Central Valley. You can't miss it. And this project runs right smack dab down the middle and will impact thousands of the most productive acres on the planet. The project will disrupt and inconvenience many individual farming operations, including increased costs to irrigation districts for the cost of delivery, as well as a loss of efficiency due to dividing single fields into multiple fields and the inefficiencies that go along with that, including, and very specifically, the need to redesign and reconstruct and develop irrigation systems, including pumps, reservoirs, drip systems, and tailwater return systems. These are going to add significant costs to the engineering, labor, and parts that are required to make these fields fertile again and viable. The project will also result in the permanent conversion of thousands of acres of farmland, not including, primarily due to the fact that the line will create unfarmable small parcels. And finally, we would just like to point out that there is widespread fear amongst landowners that the project, that they will not receive fair compensation for their land as the easements are acquired. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, the Assemblywoman graciously agreed to defer to me as well, and thank you for that, Ms. Harkey. Members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're in support of this bill. And let's just start by running down some of the fiscal issues with the high-speed rail bond and why we believe it deserves to go back on the ballot at the soonest possible date. Number one, there's a possibility and a risk of losing federal funds here, losing the RS stimulus money if that is not spent by a point later on in this decade. Not to mention with a Republican Congress in view, and hopefully continuing to be in place, the odds of there being federal money...
Now, David, let's not express our political viewpoints. It's okay. Go ahead. Yeah, right. Don't take it personally, Senator Lowenthal. Go ahead, Mr. Wolf. We digress.
Well, all that to say, Mr. Chairman, regardless of which party is in power, the odds of federal funding continuing to be in place does run a risk there. Second point, the bond debt interest in play. When the legislative analysts did their ballot analysis in 2008, they said the interest costs for this bond were going to be in the neighborhood of $600 million a year for the next 30 years ongoing. And as we all know, GO bonds have first call on general fund revenue, so this dollar amount becomes somewhat important. That $600 million figure recently jumped, according to the LAO, to $700 million, and the likelihood of that continuing to go up is also fairly dramatic. Treasurer Lockyer has come out and said that due to our credit rating, which is the 49th worst in the country, we may not even be able to sell these bonds, and certainly not in the timeline that might be identified. Again, we do have a debt service ratio in this state of 7%, and that means the first 7% of general fund revenue that comes in goes out to pay off various bond debt interest. And with a $15 billion budget deficit, potentially by the end of this fiscal year, that could very well be a major concern. And also what voters voted for in 2008. Voters wanted a full high-speed rail line from San Francisco to San Diego. And they didn't want it connected with various other rail lines. They wanted a full high-speed rail system, as the author mentioned. Even proponents of high-speed rail, like Judge Quentin Kopp, have said that voters voted for a full rail line, and that's what they deserve to be getting, and that is not what they're getting right now. The peer review group has serious questions about this project going forward. The executive director of the authority recently resigned a couple of months ago. If you want to use cap and trade money to fund high-speed rail, I think there's a serious Sinclair Paint nexus concern and risk there that could result in a lawsuit somewhere down the line. And also, another point, no private money. There's no private money identified in the business plan to fund this rail line. And why is there no private money? There's no private money because interests who would be interested in funding this thing, such as Southwest Airlines, realize that it's still cheaper and still more cost-effective to fly. Okay? AB 3034, the implementing language for high-speed rail, and I'll close with this and let other individuals speak, dictated that a trip from San Francisco to Los Angeles take 3 hours and 30 minutes. That's in statute at a mandatory speed of 220 miles an hour. And as I said last year, members, there's no train in the world that goes a consistent speed of 220 miles an hour, especially given California's topical and geographical pitfalls with hills and mountains and grade separations and other things that need to be met as trains travel through California. And just the practicability of it. The only rail line, high-speed rail, if you can call it that I think arguably works in this country is the Acela rail line. And even that, of course, is heavily subsidized by the federal government. But why does that work? That works because at least 4 of the top 10 business districts in this country, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and I don't remember what the other one is, are connected by that, and Washington, D.C.
Has a building with a large dome on top.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Wolf, if you could wrap up.
I will. Yeah, but they're connected by that rail line. The population is there to support that rail line. The only business district in the top 10 in California is Los Angeles. You're not going to get commuters on this line. And we would argue, just in closing, that the only high-speed rail line in this state that might possibly work is a rail line from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, maybe stopping off in Riverside, and you could call it the party line. And with that, we would ask...
That's a good place to start.
Yes, we would ask that this bond be put back on the ballot and ask for your support on the bill.
There's another rite of passage in this journey is Quentin Kopp and Howard Jarvis now agree on high-speed rail. Yes, ma'am. If we could be brief, please, be helpful to next speakers.
Hi, my name is Kathy Hamilton, and I represent Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail. It is a group of actually neighborhood people who've gotten together and grown to probably a little over 2,000 people. We have connections to the Central Valley and also to Southern California. And I will say that as far as composition, it is a mix of political backgrounds. In our area, it's primarily Democrats. So the people see clearly. I am new to politics. It's been 3 years since I've worked on this project. But sometime when you're brand new at something, you bring a very clear perspective of what's right, what's wrong, and we don't have other things in the way. I wanted to say that my message is simple. You know all the facts, you know all the figures, you've heard them many, many times. You know the project doesn't pencil out, and most importantly, the project will damage state finances. It will hurt, it'll take away jobs from teachers, police, and fire. It'll hurt viably necessary social programs for poor, elderly, and sick. This is the Democratic Party platform, not to pay for a train for the rich, paid for by everyone else. I ask you to objectively look at this and do the right thing. You will hear people get up in favor of it, and many of them will be talking about what's in it for them, whether it be jobs or great separations or perhaps even political contributions. The quote, young people, and I'm sort of, I guess, in between, are very idealistic. But those, we know from the Probelsky poll that the more people knew about the project, the more they voted against it. So we're asking you to look at this, do the right thing, vote this out of committee, and give the people another chance. Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is Chris Ochoa. I'm here representing the City of Palo Alto today. And I wanted to, we also, as the City of Palo Alto, is in support of Senate Bill 985 for many of the reasons you've heard. Palo Alto was one of the first local jurisdictions to unanimously support Prop 1A when it came about, but things changed. We all know what's happened to the economy. You've heard it again with the financial numbers. We've heard the inconsistencies from the High-Speed Rail Authority. Palo Alto was one of the first local jurisdictions to change their tune and unanimously oppose it. You know all the reports, whether it was a peer review group, the Legislative Analyst's Office, or the State Auditor. All of them have questioned High-Speed Rail Authority's increasingly risky funding situation and persistently weak oversight. And I wanted, in the name of time here, I wanted to bring up one quote that you heard at the March 13 hearing in Mountain View from High-Speed Rail Chairman Dan Richard. He stated, "I don't believe we are going to be able to look you in the eye or look the public in the eye and tell them that we have any greater clarity about the funding today than we did on November 1st when we issued our draft plan." And nothing's changed, and this should give us all great concern, especially you, as was mentioned when California's fighting cuts in education, social services, law enforcement. I have to mention fire service since our state fire marshal is in the audience today. But we would, in closing, these are all great concerns, in addition to many concerns we have that directly impact the City of Palo Alto. But we would ask that you support SB 985 and let the electorate have another shot at this.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Frank Oliveira. I represent a group called Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. We began as a property rights group because we did not understand why the high-speed train was going through our property when we are not in a transportation corridor. Since then, this matter has grown much larger. I've passed out to you a copy of two things: a red map, which shows you the opposition to the high-speed rail in the Central Valley, and also a simple copy of what the voters were given in November of 2008 when they went to vote on this bond measure. All of that said, starting on page 10 is the actual text of the law. Looking at the text of the law and the business plan, there are 14 points easily found in the proposition, and there are 22 deficiencies in the business plan that do not comply. I can gladly go over each one of you for you, but that will take you much time. But all of that said, you were elected to this office to practice wisdom, be objective, and to do the right thing for all of the people in the state of California. As it's been said already, polling says 2/3 of the people would not vote for this proposition again. The people do not like this for all the reasons already stated. This is your opportunity to do the right thing. I'm a believer in right and wrong, that people do the right thing when they have to. It's part of a moral compass. This is a hard decision because there's many interests that want this to proceed status quo and try to continue to mold this project into something. But they cannot mold it into Prop 1A because Prop 1A was poorly written. The requirements of Prop 1A will forever prevent this project from complying with Prop 1A. So that said, this should go back to the voters. It should be eliminated by the voters. And if California would like to build a high-speed rail, they should do it correctly, properly, well thought out, well designed, in a manner that benefits all of California. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Next, are there any other speakers in support? Okay, all right.
Let me go so that
if we could turn over some of the tables, the chairs. No, don't turn over the tables. Assemblymember Harkey, you want to go next?
I was going to chair, but I do have to.
Okay.
Or I was going to close out. Okay. Senators, I appreciate being here. As you know, I have been long and vocal about high-speed rail, 3 years now, and it wasn't for any other reason than financial reasons when I first came to this institution. Since then, it's become the project. This project is huge. The magnitude and impact on the state, you know, in the future could be tremendous. It will be tremendous if it begins in the Central Valley. We do not have a business plan. We have, if any of you are from local government, what we have is like a major investment study of what we'd one day like to do with rail in California. It's very apparent. The people of California, as well as their representatives, both in Northern and Southern California, want regional rail. That's what this plan is. It's a promotion of regional rail. There's bond restrictions. Tremendous bond restrictions. You heard them made. That bond was written in 1998, I believe. I heard from a former senator. We're trying to make that bond fit a current plan. This plan has metamorphosed time and time again merely to get the votes, the same way probably that the bond got the votes, carving through all the areas where you could pick up votes. Right now, we're focused heavily in Northern California, Southern California, in the bookends. The bookends are for $950 million of this bond. The bookends are not for $9 billion of this bond. That was for high-speed rail. Now, if you put this back to the voters and ask them would they rather have this $9 billion for regional transportation needs, I will guarantee you they'll say yes. And that's the plan you've got before you. That's not the plan they approved. You're promising that you can give funding from this bond to the Northern California area and the peninsula and also to Southern California. Do you have right-of-way agreements? Has Union Pacific, has BNSF, have they signed up on the right-of-way agreements? If you don't have those, you don't even know if you can do this. Those are very, very important. The EIR is out of whack, and you all know that. This plan keeps changing. The GAO, legislative analyst, the auditor. MOUs have been signed up that really probably can't be committed to. They will need to be match funded by all of your communities. That's what's in those MOUs with Northern and Southern California. It relies on Fed funds and as a backstop cap and trade revenues. We don't have cap and trade revenues yet, and the federal funds are not forthcoming. I was pounding the pavement in Washington, D.C. on my own dime, going from office to office for over 2 days. And I can tell you there is nothing in the transportation bills that funds high-speed rail. Regional rail? Yes. High-speed rail? No. If you began this and made some sense and helped your governor out, what we've got here is $3.5 billion, which is the cocaine for the train. It's what's getting everybody hooked on this train. Fine, spend the 3.5 where you need to make improvements in the Central Valley on the existing Amtrak. You can do that. Match fund and begin the connection from Bakersfield to the Palmdale area, where you will have private money, private investors picking up Palmdale to Las Vegas faster than you will never get it doing this. They will not pick up the Central Valley section as long as you're determined to start this IOS in the Central Valley, which I don't believe qualifies for Prop 1A funding. It's not electrified. As long as you insist on funding this thing here, you're going to have problems ever getting private funds, and you all know this. You've read the reports. You know the data. There's nothing more that I can say. I think we ought to just pull the funding. But I think the next alternative would be to send this back to the voters. That is a very good idea, because they want to revote. And if you want to modify Mr. LaMalfa's bond, send it back and say, would you rather convert this to regional rail, then Jerry Brown might have a win. And we need this governor to have a win, because we're going to have him for 6 years. If this state goes down, we all go down. I don't want to see that for the state of California. I am determined to fight this to the bitter end. You are tearing up prime Central Valley farmland. You are ruining lives for $3.5 billion that is not going to complete a train, not even be an operating segment, not even qualify for Prop 1A funding. So I ask you, please, do the right thing. I know it's very difficult. You've got a lot of people pushing on you. But we can have the same jobs. As a matter of fact, we'll have more jobs if we get private investment, because there will be PLA agreements going to Las Vegas. So I'm telling you, there is a way to do this, but not the way we're doing it. This bond, the voters were deceived. You all know the voters were deceived. It's not what they were sold. I have the lemon law. I want to pull the plug. This is the next best alternative. And I think that in this election year, and even not in this election year, for the sake of California, we need to stop the carnage, stop the debt load. We have people that want to invest in our state, and we do need transportation. But we don't need this now. And we probably never will use this. It's just something that got approved, and now we've got money burning a hole in our pocket. So I hope that you seriously consider allowing this bill to go forward. Thank you very much for your time.
We come over here, and we have a long hearing, so we don't want to inhibit your conversation or your commitment to communicating all this stuff, but if you could keep it around a minute and be concise and not repetitive, we would appreciate it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Pizzolt. I'm with Baker Commodities. I'm the Assistant General Manager for the Baker Commodities Central California Division. A lot more people, far more eloquent than I am, have spoken in support of Senator LaMalfa's bill, and we agree. We didn't always agree. We tried to work. We wanted to work with the Rail Authority, and they came to us, and we sat down with them to try and do the right thing. But unfortunately, we were pretty surprised when we found out one of the two rails alignments was going to go right through a rendering plant, our office building, our truck maintenance shop, as well as a house on the property. I mean, right through the middle of it. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what Baker does. We're one of only 3 rendering operations in Central California, that handle dairy dead stock. It's not a real sexy topic, but it's an absolutely necessary business. We serve approximately 500 dairies, as well as several beef and poultry and swine slaughter operations. We also service about 200 markets and 300 restaurants. We recover the hides from the animals. We recycle the carcasses. In the process, we create safe feed and fertilizer for the ag industry while diverting about 8,000 tons of material per month from landfills. Our service is absolutely vital to the dairy industry. Like I say, when it first came to our attention, we were quite taken aback. We did sit down with the Rail Authority, and we came to the conclusion that although we were promised otherwise, we could not get permits to move our facility either onto our existing property or to another condemned property nearby. So, unfortunately, it's just It's just not going to work the way it is. Because of our business, we have to have a seamless transition from shutting down one project or one building and opening another the next day. The alternative is that the state has upwards of 14 to 18,000...
If you could finish up, sir, I would appreciate it.
Yes, 14 to 18,000 animals a month that go unprocessed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence here. We have a lot of friends that are proponents here. We'd just like to make the short name ID
I would appreciate
themselves.
that, Senator.
So thank you.
So, name and if you have an affiliation with any group, that would be great.
Liz Fralick from Concord, and I'm the secretary for a small political action committee in Contra Costa called the Citizens for Responsible Government, and we support the Malfa's bill.
Thank you. It's a wonderful town, Concord.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Sheen, and I am from Northern California, Trinity County. That is Northern California. And I'm here to also support Senator LaMalfa's bill.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
My name is Camille Cilio, and I'm also from your district, Senator DeSaulnier. We were
Yes.
going to meet in your office, but instead we're meeting here like this because these students realized this was an issue that's going to be very important for them. Some of them are going to be voting in November for the first time. Some of them are going to be realizing that they're going to start paying taxes. They are concerned that their tax money may be going someplace that they do not wish it to go, and so they have requested to be able to
Great.
just give their name and acknowledge that this is an important bill. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Nice to see you.
I'm Brenda Dabovich. I'm the mother of an 11 and 12-year-old. I would be very proud if they were my sons, too. And I'm in support of SB 985. I really hope that you consider.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
My name is Matthew Salmon. I am a student at Monte Vista High School, and I'm in support of this bill because California voters were misinformed when this proposition was put on the ballot in 2008. If voters understood the true agricultural and fiscal impacts of this bill, they may be inclined to vote differently. Thank you.
Okay. If we could go along with Senator LaMalfa's admonition, just name and if you have an affiliation, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Richard Giglio. I'm from Foothill High School. I'm a senior, and I'm going to be able to vote in this upcoming election. And I also believe that this bill should pass because I think that California voters were more optimistic in, I believe, 2008 when this rail line was passed. And I believe that now that we're in even deeper fiscal troubles, that we should really think about our long-term investments and how profitable this rail will really be. So I think it should be put up to a review vote.
Karen Klinger, Sacramento real estate broker of over 40 years. This is going to have a huge impact on real estate agents. Also,
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
wanted to make a couple of comments.
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, please.
Thank you.
Senator LaMalfa
I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope you understand why we have to move along.
I don't, because this is the only ability we have to come to speak to you.
Actually, that's not true.
That is true.
Okay. I have a phone number that's you can call, and I will meet with you almost any time. Yes, sir.
Matthew Boomer. I'm from Monte Vista High School in Danville. I'm the vice president of the Young Republicans Club there, and we support SB 985 because we feel the voters need a second chance to vote on this project.
Thank you, Matthew.
Jared Weidenbaum, member of the Young Republicans Club at Monte Vista High School, and I support Bill 985.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony.
Arnash Kaswani from Santa Ramon, California, New District, and I stand in support of AB 985.
Thank you.
Harrison Heiser from Monte Vista High School, and I support this bill.
Thank you.
Ted Hart.
Are you from Monte Vista High School also?
No. About the class of 48, I'm afraid. I am the state coordinator for the Tea Party Patriots, and we support this bill.
Thank you. Appreciate it. If we could make space for the other speakers who are waiting in line, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Ivy Allen, also from Monte Vista High School, and I am also in support of this bill.
Thank you.
Jim Ricketts, Tea Party United. We also strongly support Doug LaMalfa's bill, and we'd appreciate your aye vote on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Peggy Westerfeld, representing a group of parents of college students that are having trouble getting their classes, and we strongly support this bill.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Phyllis Wing, Tea Party United, and I'm in full support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Mary Winfrey, and I buy tax-free municipal California bonds. The train is a bad investment. I want you to be able to pay back the money that I loaned you and the interest that you've guaranteed. If you misspend the money that we have loaned you, you won't be able to pay me back. I won't want to loan you my money. And there are thousands of little old ladies just like me. Think very carefully about what you are doing. And remember that, at least on the Monterey side, words like train to nowhere and scam are being batted about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other people who would like to speak briefly in support of this bill? Speakers in opposition to the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Karen Green Ross, and I am here on behalf of the California High-Speed Rail Authority to inform you that we oppose Senator LaMalfa's bill. By ceasing all future bond sales for high-speed rail construction and related purposes, SB 985 would effectively end the high-speed rail project. As you're aware, we released a draft business plan in early November, and we worked diligently to respond to and incorporate the hundreds of comments and address the many concerns that you in your hearings and many others at our public comment hearings and in letters provided during our extended comment period. The fiscal issues raised in today's hearing will be addressed in greater detail at tomorrow's budget hearings, but one of the comments that we received earlier on in the process was to look into the blended system as recommended by Congresswoman Eshoo, Senator Samiti, and Assemblymember Gordon, and embracing that blended system that they encouraged us to do is part and parcel of why the costs came in lower. Our internal counsel believes as well that the $68.4 billion from the LA to San Francisco blended is Prop 1A compliant, and the changes that we made in our revised business plan improve the utility of the system and its connectivity into existing regional and computer rail systems. New commitments to make early investments to deliver benefits in the urban regions at the end of the route, including funds to complete electrification of the Caltrain corridor in the next 5 to 10 years. We also have a commitment to construct an operable segment through the Tehachapi Mountains, closing the existing gap in the state's rail service and improving rail mobility throughout the state, and enhancing early utility for the Central Valley segment. Passing this bill would mean that we forego the opportunity we have at this moment to build a high-speed rail system throughout California at this price. Because of inflation, our expected growth in population, and the need to rework the preliminary engineering and environmental work already required would make waiting to build this train only more difficult and more expensive. In the cooperative agreements we entered into with the FRA, as a condition to our receipt of the $3.5 in the ARA grant money, our funding partner makes it clear they expect assurances that the state is fully committed to funding our share of the matching funds they require. This bill will jeopardize this federal grant money, not only because we will be unable to demonstrate we have the requisite matching funds, but because they expire if we do not expend them by September 2017. And without Prop 1A bond funds, we will clearly not be able to buy the necessary right-of-way, begin and complete construction in the manner expected in these grant agreements.
If you could sort of wrap up. I know you're joining this wonderful debate just now, so you'll be able to say this testimony, I fear, many times in the near future.
Yes. We hope that you see the opportunity and the benefits that this project can bring to California, and we respectfully request your no vote on this bill. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Oberstar, would you like to give brief comments on the bill?
Certainly, I'll be very brief, Mr. Chair. Ted Link Oberstar, representing California Department of Transportation. We are opposed to this bill. Our primary concern with the bill involves the $950 million in connectivity funding for projects that are independent of and yet, related to high-speed rail. These projects, regardless of high-speed rail itself, they have a lot of merit. A number of projects involving positive train control have been already the funding's been partially allocated. In some cases, contracts entered into. This bill would leave those projects high and dry with an uncertain future. So we are particularly concerned about that provision and are opposed to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Oberstar.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Dunn for the Association of California High-Speed Trains. I'll be brief in my comments. We're opposed to this bill. I'll leave you with a few numbers. That is California has the 4 most densely populated urban areas currently, and 22 million people are going to be moving to our state in the next 20 years. We cannot sit by and do nothing. Or born in our state. We cannot sit by and do nothing. The cost, it is expensive, it will be difficult, but we're Californians, we do difficult things every day. It can be done, it should be done. We ask for you to reject this bill.
Do you want to say anything about whips? No, don't say anything about whips.
There's a nice video that's been produced that says enough about it. I recommend you should all watch it.
Michael?
Senator Mike Robeson on behalf of the Caltrain, this is the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Authority. And Caltrain's opposed to this bill. Caltrain's long-term viability is dependent upon electrifying the Caltrain line. Caltrain and a number of other Bay Area transportation agencies and the High Speed Rail Authority entered into an MOU recently. That MOU is reflected in the business plan, and it depends on bond money to fund it. And for that reason, Caltrain's opposed.
Josh?
Gus Corey here on behalf of the California Transit Association. We are in opposition. I'll just associate myself with the previous remarks made and just add that transit is heavily dependent on Prop 1A and 1B for its capital program. We could use the money now to improve safety and service, so we ask for your no vote.
Thank you.
Mark Smith on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies. We'd like to recognize that the revised business plan reflects a lot of the work and the investment that members of this legislature and the administration have put into it. It deserves a fair hearing. This bill is premature for those reasons. We would oppose it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Also, in opposition, just say a couple words of our membership. Depending on the craft, we're upwards of 30% unemployed. This is one of the few ways that the legislature in California and the governor can create jobs, by selling bonds and taking on big projects that employ a lot of people. Nobody disputes the fact that we need those jobs to help drive our economic recovery. Secondly, I'll say it was mentioned the infrastructure needs of the state. People keep coming to California. Keep moving here because it's a great place to live. None of the proponents talked about the alternatives to not doing high-speed rail. Building more runways, building more freeways costs more than the high-speed rail project. It needs to happen because of the fact that those infrastructure needs are not going to go away. We have new leadership at the High-Speed Rail Authority, a new plan. I don't know in my almost 10 years of being in this building of an issue that has been debated and talked about and heard before committees more than this. There is no doubt that this has been given tremendous amount of oversight by this building and this legislature. Clearly, people who have been heard on both sides, we need to move forward with this project, let the new leadership figure out how to make things better from the past administration at the authority that had its own problems, and make this happen for the state. We oppose. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Flocks from the California Labor Federation. I'd like to second the words of my brother from the building trades and add that this is the largest economic development project that the state of California has. If we delay, not only are we turning away federal funds, but we are turning away private investment in a project that will come. For the first request for expressions of interest by the authority, there were over 1,100 private companies who said they were interested in investing in this project. And we would just oppose this bill and support high-speed rail and think it should go through the legislative process.
Thank you, Ms. Flax. Mr. Crimmins or Mr. Kyle? Which one of you?
Tim Crimmins, Operating Engineers, AFL-CIO. You've heard public testimony almost ad nauseum, sometimes lasting to the wee hours in the morning. But our view is with a new business plan, you really haven't had a chance to vet the new business plan, and I think this bill thwarts that effort. I think you've got an obligation to the voters. Pass the Bond Act with an intention of building high-speed rail. Can you refine that plan? Can you change it? Can you make a better plan? And I think if this bill passes today, it stops your effort and your obligation to the voters almost. Refine a plan if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Crimmins.
I'm Michael Quigley here on behalf of the California Alliance for Jobs. I'm here in opposition to SB 985 in support of the project. I'll associate myself with the previous comments, especially the fact that we do have a new business plan that was written with a lot of input from both the public and this legislative body. And I think we need to take a look at that and really examine that before we would look at it moving the project back before the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kyle?
Mark Kyle, Operating Engineers Local 3. I'm told by my colleagues and several other folks that sometimes I speak too much and at inappropriate times.
I've never found that true.
Your committee colleague, Mr. Lowenthal, was here, so I could eat some humble pie. But so I'll keep it brief. I believe the effort by Senator LaMalfa is stale and is no longer appropriate. I believe it also lacks a vision towards the future, and it represents an obstructionist effort, an obstruction to mobility for the future of California, obstruction to clean air, obstruction to jobs for our unemployed members, and I believe you should vote against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Anyone else in opposition? Any questions or comments of Mr. LaMalfa? Mr. Rubio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My fellow NASCAR fan, I will commend you for being tenacious and bringing this bill forward. Now, I think the second or third year running. And you and I have had private conversations about this, given concerns that I have regarding high-speed rail, the business plan, the alignment, etc. And on that point, I want to thank the members of the Central Valley, particularly those who took the time to handwrite notes for us. It's rather unique to be handed a letter when you walk into committee. So I want to commend you for doing that and having your voice heard today. I see this in two different elements. One, we've got to give credit where credit is due. On the side of those who have been opposing high-speed rail that have made a better product because they have made sure that their voice has been heard. Second, as well as with the governor, he's taken a very leadership and bold, aggressive way in changing the leadership, changing the plan, reducing the cost to this very important project. I've also believed that if we go before the voters, the only question, there should not be only one question before them, whether or not they want high-speed rail, yes or no. Because the other element that was before the voters with Prop 1A was the significant amount of jobs that would be created in infrastructure projects. I've shared with you privately, and I'd like to also share with you publicly, that I believe it'd be a different question if we were going to the voters and saying, the plan has changed. Collectively, leaders in the state have come together and determined that perhaps this business plan does not pencil out. There are some who disagree strongly. I'm still developing my opinion on the subject. From the business plan perspective, I believe it is a very, very important project that would move the state forward. But I don't ever think we should take $9 billion that the voters have said they want to invest in infrastructure and then put it before them at a time where there's been so much opposition that they may strike down the ability to invest $9 billion in infrastructure in the areas of transportation. Those who came from Kings County, Tulare, Fresno, we could invest in water infrastructure that would significantly bolster the economy and take care of the single greatest threat in our state's future, and that is water. But I will not support your bill today because it only addresses the issue of high-speed rail rather than posing a second question, and that is, if the electorate does not want to spend $9 billion on high-speed rail, then should we not consider spending that $9 billion on transportation corridors or on water infrastructure? And I think that would be a very appropriate question to ask the electorate if we're going to do so. And I say if because I believe the momentum, or at least the efforts underway by our governor, I got to commend the Assemblywoman for announcing that he'll be here for another term already, 6 years. I think that was a public endorsement. That we should allow the governor and his team to continue to bring forward to this legislature. We still have to decide whether we're going to fund it in this year's budget. One, what the business plan is. Two, I brought up the issue of the significant gap between Bakersfield and Southern California. Assemblywoman Harkey mentioned that. That's in the new plan. So I think there's a number of issues. They've been to Kings County more. The new chairman, Dan Richards, I want to commend his efforts because he's been to the Central Valley more times than every other chair put together since the existence of this very commission. So while I appreciate your efforts, I think that, one, we have to pause and give some time for the governor to do his work. That's one. But second, I'd also challenge you with, if we're going to go back to the electorate, should we not ask at a minimum to use the $9 billion on other transportation infrastructure and water infrastructure to move our state into the future as it pertains to transportation and water. So thank you again for bringing it up, but I just wanted to publicly make my stance clear.
Senator Weiland?
I think this is the first time I've had a chance to talk about this. But I'm going to try to be concise. I really understand the desire and the dream of mass transit, because it seems to solve a lot of problems. We know what they are. And I'm sure I'm wrong, but I've looked at most regional transportation boards and membership and everywhere else, and I'm kind of surprised by it, but I don't find other members who've lived with this a lot. I have. I lived in Europe a couple of years. I lived in New York City for 5 years. I've gone up and down the East Coast regularly on mass transit. I've taken, whether it's to work, every day, subways, buses, you name it. And I believe in mass transit. And I believe in subsidizing mass transit. If you look at most of those systems, New York, you have to subsidize when you have the ridership. When you have the ridership. And we just saw in the newspaper the other day that the guy they've assigned to be their board or whatever, I don't even know what the government entity is, with the consultant who came up with the ridership is his best buddy. And he even says, well, we don't talk, we separate business and our personal relationship. The problem is not how you rearrange the deck chairs. The problem is there won't be the ridership. If I thought there was going to be the ridership, I'd be all for it. Mass transit is great when you can use it. When I could walk my apartment 3 blocks to the subway and the commute, you'd wait 5 minutes in the morning, and et cetera, et cetera. And when you're going to a place where infrastructure exists, you're working in an office, if you need to go somewhere else, you take a cab, it's great. I talk to high-speed rail people, and I say, well, so in Bakersfield, you're going to have parking structures, you're going to have an expanded rental car system, you're going to have taxis, and places like Fresno or some other places, you're going to move the station because it's such a bad area, and on and on. They look at me with a blank stare because they've never considered that. If you really want to do something about people moving around the state, you know what you ought to do? You ought to buy commuter airplanes. And what you'd find is, and there are many members of this body who can't fly from Bakersfield to Sacramento or San Luis to Sacramento and on, you already have infrastructure. But the real point I think Senator Rubio made, which is the real need for infrastructure, is water and the existing roads. I mean, people are appalled when you go up and down the 5. The roads in San Diego, and I think it's pretty much true in most of Southern California, and I've been born and raised there, are the worst I've ever seen them. That's huge. So, and then the last thing I think is the job issue. We do need jobs, and we do need an expanded economy. The best way to do that is to ask the people who make the investments and create the job. And this body never does this. We're sitting here in the bill factory. We have sterile debates about which is the best way to do that. We don't ask the people to do it. If we had the governor and the leadership start making phone calls this afternoon, we would have CEOs within days ready to tell us what we need to do. The reason that we don't do that is some people don't want to hear the answers. But they're the people who create the jobs. When Intel has created 15,000 jobs in Oregon, build big buildings. They're building in Chandler, Arizona, probably the biggest chip factory in the world. They built another one in New Mexico. And we don't even ask them. They call it Silicon Valley because of Intel and the silicon chips. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Weiland. Senator Keogh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will try to be brief also. Senator LaMalfa, I was just telling him I saw his appearance on KPBS or PBS NewsHour last month or the month before when they were doing a segment on California high-speed rail, and Senator LaMalfa articulated his opposition for a lot of reasons, just as you did here today, and just as some of the folks who came to support the bill did. But, you know, that's not the way I look at it. From the beginning, I saw high-speed rail as part of California's future. And I think the voters, when they passed the bond measure, really embraced the idea of an alternative to both freeways and to airports. People are tired of being stuck in traffic on the freeways and air traffic and commuting, especially, you're going to take a plane to Europe, you're going to take a plane to Asia, I get that. But for shorter hops, air travel is getting increasingly time-consuming, security, the whole business is just more and more unpleasant and crowded. And the high-speed rail was struggling, it really was. But Governor Brown sees it as part of our future. And yeah, as I said, I totally agree. He has demonstrated very strong leadership. He's brought in new direction for the High-Speed Rail Authority. And most importantly, I think, he's put it on a budget diet. So he's reduced the costs of the program overall, and he's reorganized some of the priorities. I think those are very important steps to get high-speed rail back on track and to get the doable early stages underway. I wish it were starting in San Diego, but it's not. But it will be part of a more modern transportation system that offers Californians alternatives for getting around our state. It's important for jobs. It's important for the environment. It's important for our future economic growth. And I think it's something that I strongly support, so I can't support your bill naturally. And I think we should keep a close eye on it and make sure that the money being spent is being spent effectively, but I think we should do it. We should build the high-speed rail system. And I know Senator Lowenthal has been involved in this issue for a long time and has taken a great deal of effort in getting it on the right track, and I think you deserve to be commended for that also, Senator Lowenthal. But I won't be able to support the bill today, Senator LaMalfa.
Thank you. Senator Gaines.
Great. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to express support for you bringing this forward, Senator LaMalfa. I think it is the right path to take when we take a look at the expense and what's happened and how the expense has gone dramatically beyond what the initiative called for. That is the key point in my mind, and that this really ought to go back to the people and maybe redefined in terms of what the priorities are. If we're going to go down a path with high-speed rail in the state of California, certainly we need to live within the means that are called out within the initiative. And I've always been a proponent of higher-speed rail that would not have as complicated technology, that would use existing track, that would look at profitable lines, let's say, between L.A. and San Diego, or perhaps even to Las Vegas, even Sacramento to San Francisco, where we know that we have high traffic corridors and opportunities to bring in elements of the private sector so that they can operate these portions of the line on a profitable basis. And then we could look at expanding it over time. We could live within our means and that would be kind of the perfect blend, the ability to use some of the existing infrastructure to bring in the private sector to operate it on a profitable basis and to provide alternatives of transportation as the state continues to grow. So I appreciate what the governor's tried to do in terms of bringing the cost down, but it's not living within our means. The initiative called for a build-out of $33 billion and then sets criteria within the initiative that we can't live by. So it seems to me it ought to go back to the people. So I appreciate you bringing this forward today. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator LaMalfa, would you like to close? And I'd like to know whether you'd like to proceed with this or not.
I'm sure you would like me to close, and you've been very, very gracious and patient the whole time, Mr. Chairman and members, so I do appreciate it. I do have a couple responses here on what has been said, and we'll get it done. First, in response to something the Rail Authority had mentioned here earlier, they're opposed because they believe that this bill would cause that would cease all future appropriations from Prop 1A and effectively end the high-speed rail project. This bill doesn't do that. This bill simply puts it back in front of the voters of California to decide with new and real information as to what they are voting on in 2008 and again on hopefully November 2012. Now, if there's no confidence by the Rail Authority or others that the voters would uphold what happened in 2008, then that's a PR problem that they have. Because I believe the voters, every time they look at this, we've heard about the polling, we hear about the word of mouth, that they don't have any confidence anymore. We've heard 5 different plans that still have not established a clear path for where the rail is going to go, how much it's going to cost. We've heard some overly optimistic numbers on ridership, and that juxtaposed with what the cost of other infrastructure to replace it would be. We've heard ridership numbers based on one train leaving every 5 minutes for 19 hours a day, 7 days a week, full of 700 people, causing the amount of ridership would project to keep high-speed rail at capacity. Well, it doesn't run at capacity. The numbers are 1/4 of that, and yet they're basing the cost of other infrastructure in juxtaposition to the at max capacity of running the rail, as I mentioned, every 5 minutes for 19 hours a day. So we're not talking about apples and apples on the numbers here. We're again, the same bait and switch has been going on the whole time with the numbers on this. We heard earlier in the year, until our hearing in November about this, that it was 1 million jobs. Well, it finally came out that it was 1 million job years. What's that mean? Are we using dog years now for rail? Really? So the admission has been something much less, to maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000 jobs. And so no one is more pro-jobs than me on here. Maybe I'm tied with a lot of my colleagues or who's pro-jobs around here. But we have to care about what it costs to invent these jobs. And when the cost is millions of dollars per job of public sector money, we might as well, in comparison of the utility of this possible project, why don't we put people to work making buggy whips for the government? Because indeed, it's becoming more like make-work jobs. Now, if we want to have infrastructure that's really going to do something for California, and I'm in wholehearted agreement with Senator Rubio, that let's get to work on building the water storage, the water infrastructure, the things that are going to safeguard our water system and stabilize it with those same jobs. I invite operating engineers and everybody else to come join in on that task and build the water supply. It's really going to turn on the jobs and the water back in Senator Rubio's valley and protect it up in my valley. And as well, with the upgrades that are needed to the Highway 5 and many others, the airport runways, that in the true ridership comparison is more realistic. We can be building all these projects that people readily use. Almost everybody owns a car. They can easily access a good running freeway system that doesn't have the right-hand lane all broken up or has the amount of lanes necessary to move traffic ably, as well as these empty diamond lanes, which is a whole different thing I'll talk about on a different day. Now, we have the intent of Prop 1A was not connectivity projects for Caltrain or for Metrolink. It was a high-speed rail project. So those have merit on their own, but that's a different bill. It isn't this one. It isn't high-speed rail. So as Senator Rubio was talking about, we can have that discussion on building more highways or building other projects. But that isn't what the high-speed rail bond was. And to get out there and be doing these other types of projects now that we seem to have lured urban legislators and urban needs in on trying to throw a little money towards them, trying to keep this alive with that lure. It's gotten away from the legality of what high-speed rail and Prop 1A was about. So let me just talk about real quick some of the folks that are in favor of putting it back on the ballot. We have the San Jose Mercury News is editorialized for that, the Oakland Tribune, San Diego Union Tribune, the Santa Clarita Sentinel, the Washington Post, and even the Wall Street Journal all believe it would be appropriate to put this back on the ballot, and others out there haven't come forward yet. Municipalities that have come forward to either oppose high-speed rail in general or support my bill SB 985 to put it back on the ballot include Kern County, Kings County, Shasta County, Orange County, the City of Palo Alto, who we heard from, City of Atherton, City of Lemoore, City of Burlingame, City of Hanford, City of Rancho Santa Margarita, Mission Viejo, and San Juan Capistrano. So early on in the discussion, we heard that building it in the valley made sense because there was the least amount of opposition to building it in the valley. How would you like to be doing something or showing up to some place where you go because it's the least amount of opposition to what you're doing? This is something people should be wanting to embrace. And if this isn't it, then we have very limited funds in the state of California for infrastructure. We ought to be going in the direction Senator Rubio was talking about, whether that's highways, airports, water storage, etc., instead of something that by and large people are finding out with buyer's remorse that they don't want. We're about to embark on the commitment for several generations here of, in its lifetime, 80, 100 years for a high-speed rail project, of hundreds of billions of dollars by the time all is said and done. Shouldn't we be thoughtful enough to contemplate, is this really the target the people of California have asked for? Or has it grown into something that, although ideal, isn't really reality in present-day 2012 California? The voters have been deceived, they've been misled. Indeed, last year the big push was to try and get this started by the fall of 2012 because we're going to lose the federal money. Well, only recently they've relented on that and said, well, you don't really have to start by the fall of 2012, you just have to have it done by 2017. Yet another deceit.
Mr. LaMalfa?
Yes, sir?
Could you wrap up? I know you're aware of our agenda.
Yes, sir. Yep, I appreciate it again. I will wrap up there. I will, in conversation with Senator Smitty earlier, and that he's going to be having in his subcommittee to a discussion and a possible vote on high-speed rail. I'm going to defer a vote today and ask for in the future a more of a vote-only hearing on the bill. But I'm glad to be able to have this hearing today and get this all aired out with all of our witnesses here today. And so, again, very appreciative, sir, for allowing to have this debate today. And I ask that we defer the vote until a date in the future. So thank you. Okay. Thank you, members of the committee.
We will respect your wishes, and we'll hope that next time we can have the testimony a little more quickly or have it in a venue where we can spend more time and only consider just the specific merits of the project. So next time you come back, it'll just be vote only. And if there are members of the public who wonder what's happening, the author has asked that we not vote on it now, we hold it over. This is the second time the committee heard the bill. We've granted reconsideration. So there'll be plenty of discussion with this for those who came. Thank you for bringing the Republican Club from Monte Vista High School in my district here. But there'll be plenty of opportunities to discuss this, including tomorrow when the Budget Subcommittee that has transportation in it will spend, I think, was it Senator Lowenthal's on? We'll spend 3 hours on this issue, so to be continued. All right, that'll move us back to our agenda. Senator Vargas. You have 30 seconds.
That's about all I'll need.
Actually, you used up all of your time in front of this committee last week, so. This is item number 12, SB 1549.
But you didn't help me last time, Mr. Chairman.
I helped you more than I wanted to, believe me.
My friend. Two great bills.